Why do new construction home prices change so often? This is definitely not an easy one to address with buyers, especially when they are seeing prices fluctuate. But prices aren't random. Think of them more like the stock market. Prices in new construction respond to real factors such as demand, construction costs, timing, and how community is progressing. This is not always the case, but early on in community development, pricing is often more competitive. But as homes sell, amenities are completed, and demand increases, prices naturally adjust to reflect that added value. A great life example is end of the year. Sales typically slow down during the holidays, and builders may offer more competitive pricing or incentives to meet their year-end goal. Then what happens? January hits and buyers jump back into the market, demand increases, and prices often rise. I've seen that pattern kind of year after year. The key takeaway is that waiting for the perfect price doesn't always work in your favor. I compare it to finding the perfect dress. You wait for it to go on sale, and when it finally does, your size is gone. So don't miss out on the perfect home. You can't negotiate on new construction home. Is that true? This one I hear all the time, and the answer is, it depends. Builders don't negotiate the same way sellers do, or even other builders. But that doesn't mean you can't ask. One of the biggest priorities for builders is protecting the overall value of a community, so homes continue to appraise properly, especially in the early stages of the build-out. Instead of price reductions, what I often see is value being added in other ways. That can look like closing cost assistance, design upgrades, or special financing options. Here's where strategy matters. I've worked with buyers where applying $10,000 towards a rate buy-down saved them far more over time than taking $10,000 off the purchase price. Here at David Weekley Homes, we really try to work with the buyers to come up with a win-win situation. It's not about asking for everything. It's about knowing what to ask for and when, and what matters to you most. What's the difference between a spec home and a to-be-built home? This is a great question, and one that can be confusing if you're new to new construction. A spec or quick move-in home is already under construction or fully completed. The floor plan, the structural options, and most design selections have already been chosen, which means you can usually move in much sooner. There are some big advantages here as well. Quick move-in homes are often priced competitively, usually offer discounted interest rates, and they take the pressure off the buyer when it comes to choosing the interior finishes. The big misconception here is that QMIs don't receive the same level of care as a to-be-built, and I could assure you that here at David Weekley, that is not the case. On the flip side, a to-be-built home starts from the ground up. You choose the home site, the floor plan, the structural options, and many design details. It is a more personalized experience, but it does take more time and effort. Here in Evergreen Island, we do offer both options to buyers. The real difference comes down to timing versus customization. What are builder incentives and how do they actually work? Well, builder incentives are limited time perks designed to help buyers save thousands of dollars and build value in your investment. They often come in the form of closing costs, interest rate buydowns, design center allowance, or even things like appliance packages and blinds. They are all paid for by the builder. What's important to understand is that incentives change based on market conditions and are usually tied to specific homes, lenders, or timelines. For example, some financing incentives require you using a preferred lender or contracting and closing by a certain date. When used the right way, incentives can make a meaningful difference in the overall affordability. The key is to understand the details before they expire so you don't miss out. What actually happens after you sign the contract? Signing the contract is an exciting moment, but buyers often ask, what happens next? After signing, the process becomes very structured. You'll finalize financing, make design selections if the home allows for them, and then construction begins or continues depending on the stage of the home. You'll move through clear milestones: the foundation, framing, drywall, the finishes, and finally the walkthrough. One thing buyers are often surprised by is how much communication happens along the way. Here at David Weekley, we do weekly calls with your builder And we conduct several in-person meetings throughout the entire construction process of the home. And something that I love is our individual home buyer portal, where you have access to everything and anything related to your home. So there are no surprises, uncertainty, and only transparency. Building is a wild and fun ride, and my biggest role is to guide you through each step with confidence. What's the real benefit of buying new construction versus resale? This is a huge one. With new construction, you're starting fresh. Everything is brand new and never lived in. That means you know the full history of the home and not dealing with someone else's DIY projects or lack of proper maintenance. Being the first owner gives a buyer a peace of mind that resale simply cannot. Homes now are also built to today's standards with modern layouts, updated building codes, and new systems like your roof, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. That usually means fewer surprise repairs early on. As an added comfort, David Weekley Homes offers warranties on all of our homes, giving you even more peace of mind. New construction also allows builders to offer incentives that resale sellers simply can't, which saves you thousands of dollars. Another huge benefit is the energy efficiency. Today's new construction homes can be 40 to 50% more energy efficient than homes built as recently as 2016. That translates to lower utility bills month after month, and here in Florida, that is super important. How long does it take to build a new construction home? This one is really important to know because build times for new construction homes are very different today than they were just a year ago. Our building process has become so much more streamlined and efficient. On average, most new construction homes take about 6 to 8 months to complete. The exact timeline really depends on when you contract and the stage of the home. A build from the ground up naturally takes longer than a home that is already under construction. But typically we estimate about 2 months for the permitting and design process, followed by about 4 to 5 months for construction. While we do our very best to stay on schedule, unforeseen delays can occur. So flexibility, patience, and communication is so important during this process. That's also why we schedule our weekly calls with the builder. That is to keep you informed, address updates, and ensure transparency. The key takeaway is there are multiple paths and timelines available, and with the right guidance and communication, we could help you choose the option that best fits your needs and timing. What upgrades are worth it and which ones should you skip? Well guys, not all upgrades are created equal, and this is one of the most important conversations we have before and during the design process. When you're choosing upgrades, the smartest investments are the ones that are difficult or super expensive to change later. Think structural options such as office versus bedroom, and the big three, which are flooring, cabinetry, and countertops. Those are the things that you'll live with every day, and changing them after the home is built can be very costly and super disruptive. On the flip side, some upgrades are much easier to tackle later. Decorative lighting is a great example of that. The goal isn't to upgrade everything, it's to upgrade wisely by focusing on what's truly adding long-term value and functionality. When starting building from dirt, it is so important to know what is included as a standard or options, so do your research. How do contingencies work with new construction? Contingencies do exist in new construction, but they work differently than resale and from builder to builder. The two most common contingencies we typically navigate are home to sell and home to close. These usually come with firm deadlines, but don't walk away from your dream home before asking the question, because they do exist. That can depend on the market, the stage of construction, and the builder. For quick move-in homes or completed homes, contingencies are a little bit more limited because let's be real, taking a completed home off the market for 60 days during high demand is a huge risk. This is why understanding options early on is so important. Knowledge gives you flexibility and the guidance on how to move forward. Do I need a realtor when buying new construction? Oh boy, earmuffs, realtor friends. Short answer is no, you are not required to have a realtor. As a sales consultant, my job is to guide the buyer through the building process from start to finish and make sure everything runs smoothly. However, that does not mean realtors are not incredibly valuable, because they absolutely are. At David Weekly Homes, we truly see realtors as partners. They bring market knowledge, negotiation skills, and strong advocacy for the clients, which adds real value to the buying experience. I like to compare it to an athlete. A tennis player does not just have one person in their corner. They have a coach, a trainer, and maybe even a sports psychologist. Everyone plays a different role, but they are all working towards the same goal. When a buyer has both a realtor and a sales consultant, they get a full team. That teamwork creates a smoother process, better communication, and more confident buyer from contract to closing.